So let me just start this out by saying, Ethan Klein, I know that you're going to watch this. I know that you're going to see this. You basically spend most of your life at this point just looking at people who talk negatively about you and picking and choosing which ones to respond to based on whichever ones you think are easy targets or whichever ones you think that you can purposefully misconstrue and lie about in the most heinous ways possible to accuse them of anti-Semitism. So I know you're going to see this. Contact me anytime. We'll talk live. We'll see how you can manage this bullshit when you can actually be called on it in a live environment where you can't just be allowed to get away with the bullshit that you're spewing without being called out for it and hanging out in your much smaller now bubble of devoted fans who are mindless zombies, basically. You know precisely how to contact YouTube creators. You know how to find the email. You know how to mail them. So talk to me. I dare you. So Ethan Klein has been weaponizing his Jewish identity to attempt to cover for his own tacit and outright support of the genocide in Gaza. That is what is happening here. Ethan Klein, a rich white man from the USA who moved to Israel and became an Israeli citizen by choice, is attempting to weaponize this notion that he is actually some sort of discriminated and oppressed Jewish man being attacked for no reason aside from his Jewish identity in order to try and get out of the very valid charges being made against him of sympathy for genocide. And he's doing it in the typical way that pro-Israel people do this. They just lie. They lie through their teeth. Firstly, I just want to make very clear here that the notion that Ethan Klein has ever meaningfully experienced any sort of hurt or disadvantage due to anti-Semitism is absurd. Ethan Klein has only experienced privilege due to his Jewishness. That is a fact. Ethan Klein was born into an upper middle class / upper class family of white people. Ethan Klein used his Jewish ancestry to be allowed to move to Israel on no basis aside from his ethnicity. And since then, he has done nothing but weaponize his Jewish ethnicity to attempt to get out of problems that he has caused for himself with idiotic comments and that he has made in idiotic positions that he has attempted to defend. For him, Jewishness is a privilege. For him, it's something that he can fall back on when, if he was just like a normal white guy instead of a white Jewish guy, he would not have that thing to fall back on. So he can start screeching anti-Semitism in situations where he would otherwise have no out. For this man to try and claim that he has ever meaningfully experienced anti-Semitism, to accuse others of being anti-Semitic against him as if it is not entirely based on the shitty things that he says, the garbage that he sustains. Ethan Klein himself is someone who has been more anti-Semitic than pretty much any of the people, or all of the people who he claims are anti-Semitic combined. When Ethan Klein sees visibly Jewish people in the street, this is what he says about them. This is a video of Ethan Klein when he saw visibly Jewish men in the street in Israel, Hasidic Jewish men, people who actually, at least if they weren't in Israel, might be identified by their look as Jews and thus discriminated against because of it. Not like Ethan, people who are actually visibly Jewish. This is what he thought about them.
I mean, I could take these guys a little bit more seriously if it wasn't for this curly ass shit. Like these fucking double curls.
That is disgusting.
It's just goofy.
But also, come on, wearing a full suit in the summer.
You know what? Whatever, dude. Whatever they want to do is fine. But
they stink the whole place for everyone.
Stink, suit, whatever, okay? The thing that puts them, you know, the thing that makes it not okay. Here we got one driving a car. Careful, everybody. The thing that not makes it okay is these curly ass, goofy mouth, because it just makes you into a goofy guy. You try walking around that shit. You walk around something like that, you're nuts. It's like having a rat tail. It's like having two rat tails on each side of your head.
Okay, so for Ethan Klein, visibly Jewish people are smelly. They're goofy guys. Their hairstyles aren't okay. This is actual anti-Semitism. This is actual, real anti-Semitism. Ethan Klein is a man who has nothing Jewish about him. Nothing. Zero is Jewish about him, aside from the fact that he happened to be born into a family with Jewish ancestry. He has never meaningfully expressed his Jewishness in any way that matters. Never. And when he sees people who do, it fucking disgusts him. His Jewishness only ever comes up when it's something for him to fall back on after he's been caught saying something fucking dumb. There's more, by the way. Obviously, I just cut the video off a minute before the end, and he has an entire podcast episode. I'll bring it up on the screen, though I'm not going to watch it because it will take too long, where he basically shits on Hasidic Jews, visible Jews all the time. This one right here, if you want to look it up on your own time, it's called Ethan Klein on the Jewish Community. 30 seconds in, there is a segment called Inbred Jews, just to give you an idea of what you could be in for if you watch it. There's a segment called Inbred Jews. There's a segment called Inbreeding. This is what Ethan Klein thinks of actual Jews who express their Jewishness visibly. For this man to try to fall back on the notion of anti-Semitism as he has ever meaningfully experienced it or meaningfully been disadvantaged by it in any way, shape, or form is total fucking bullshit. So he made a video claiming that Twitch has a massive anti-Semitism problem, and his basis for this was a live show that some Arab Twitch creators did, where they ranked people on like their ability to use the word Habibi. And this is what he showed. This is what Ethan Klein showed as apparently anti-Semitic. Arab coded, asked permission to use the word, thinks it's a slur, and loves Sabra. Sabra being a brand of Israeli hummus, which is well known for being total shit and also Israeli. So yeah, not much more to say about that. Israel loves to appropriate Arab food and start claiming that it's Israeli, and the Sabra brand of hummus and its global prevalence, despite being total shit, is a great expression of that. There's nothing more anti-Arab than buying shitty, low-quality, like pre-made Israeli hummus. There's also a massacre committed under the orders of the Israelis in the Lebanese towns of Sabra and Shatila. Could also be a reference to that. Now, Ethan Klein, what does he say that Sabra is?
It is Arab, and bottom is loves Sabra. Sabra is a very popular hummus.
This is his example of anti-Semitism, by the way. Boycott Israeli apartheid on Israeli hummus.
This brand, I know in Israel, it's pretty much in everybody's refrigerator, and it's kosher.
How would hummus not be kosher? What ingredient in hummus could possibly not be kosher? Hold on. Is olive oil kosher? I don't understand. It's chickpeas, olive oil, tahini, and lemon. Is it possible that could ever not be kosher? I'm not exactly sure, but he's trying to lean on that, obviously. He's just bringing that up as if to say, you are against Jewish people in general because this brand is kosher. There's no fucking reason that you could bring that up.
Been the subject of the pro-Palestine boycott. I mean, it's kind of just Arab good, Jew bad.
So you are equating Israel, an Israeli brand of hummus, with the very notion of Jewishness? He's trying to sell this idea that he's being discriminated against, specifically because he is Jewish, right? There's nothing else to it. Nothing to do with what he said, nothing to do with what he's done. It's just because he was born Jewish. This poor, victimized Jewish man right here, this poor victim of anti-Semitism, he's basically a victim of apartheid rather than a perpetrator. This is basically what Zionism is based on and how it's justified today. The reason why Israel can do what it does now, today, and not end up getting bombed the same way that Serbia did, is one simple thing only: Jewish exceptionalism. This idea spread by privileged white guys like this, that anti-Semitism, despite today not involving any sort of real meaningful material or systemic oppression, is not only on par with other forms of racism, like, being anti-black, anti-brown people, whatever, but worse. And therefore Israel, because it is a so-called Jewish state, should be allowed to do things that otherwise would not be permissible. That is what this sort of dishonest weaponizing of anti-Semitism is for, and it is the entire reason that Israel can do what it does without the USA turning against it and bombing it, as the USA has done when its allies have gone too far in the past, which it did to Serbia. Well, not to Serbia, but to Bosnian Serbs. In any other one of the USA's allies doing what Israel has been doing in Gaza so explicitly, so obviously, so well filmed, they would have had to turn against it by now. Even like a Republican president who wasn't Trump would have turned against it. Even Reagan would have been bombing Israel by this point. And the entire reason why it is enabled is this notion. The reason why the US can get away with supporting them regardless is this victim narrative being spread here by people like Ethan Klein to enable genocide. You are not a victim in any way, shape, and form. If anything, you have victimized other Jewish people, actual visible Jewish people, by fucking screaming at them and talking about how smelly they are and making fun of their traditional hairstyles. As I said at the beginning of this segment, the only way in which Ethan Klein's Jewishness has ever done anything for him is to advantage him even above other white people, because he was able to move to Israel, to be given citizenship on the basis of nothing more than being Jewish, to live in a state which exists at the cost of Palestinians, at the cost of an entire other people based on their ethnicity. He was able to do that because he is Jewish and for no other reason. For this piece of shit To dare to claim that he has ever been a victim of anti-Semitism that has ever affected him or anyone he really knows in any meaningful way is total bullshit. I'm so sick of this. Other people can't say what I say here because they'll get banned for it. They'll get put on like some ADL hit list for it. I can say it. I don't give a shit. It's time to stop abiding by this narrative of Jewish exceptionalism. We don't need random Jewish people to validate our positions. We don't need some Jew to tell us that this is okay or it's not. Israel is a state that claims it is Jewish, that claims to be carrying out genocide currently in this present moment in the name of the Jewish people, and it uses this notion of some sort of global systemic anti-Semitism to justify it, to justify why it should be allowed to do things that other countries are not allowed to do. This is only enabled by this idiocy. Every single time that Israel is rightfully called out for actual facts, for actual actions, for actual material reality, the response is always but anti-Semitism in one way or the other. Either we need this state because we are Jewish and we can't go anywhere else, which is obviously bullshit because this guy disproves that. He moved to Israel and then he left. Liar. That, or just to scream that anything anti-Israel is anti-Semitic no matter what. Like you call out Israel bombing a bunch of kids, that's anti-Semitism. There was an article recently by some idiotic British writer who claimed that saying that Israel massacres children is anti-Semitic, it's blood libel, when Israel is factually massacring children. That is the sort of person who Ethan Klein is. He's in line with that. Blood libel is specifically the false claim made by Christians 500 years ago that Jews would kill children to use their blood in religious rituals. It is not factually that Israel massacres children, which it factually does. No one ever would accept the argument that, it's okay for some Congolese warlord to massacre people because he's black, because black people have endured historical oppression, because of slavery or something. It's time for us to stop accepting such ridiculous arguments in the case of Jewish people, to stop paying them any mind, to stop playing into the narrative of Jewish exceptionalism that enables this bullshit. If you are Jewish in the world today, there is one of two possibilities, or one of three possibilities. One, you are a random white person living in the US, Europe, Australia, Canada, etc. Your experience in life is that you are a random white person, except you also have this Jewish identity which you can occasionally fall back on. 2, you live in Israel and you live at the cost of Palestinians. 3, you are a visible, traditional religious Jew living outside of Israel. Is that you, Ethan Klein? No, actually, you hate people like that. So please, shut the fuck up. Anyway, Ethan Klein, after he uploaded this, he made a claim on his Instagram story. Just take my word for it. Everyone's seen it by now. I'm not going to waste time looking for it. But he made a claim on his Instagram story that by saying like Sabra in that tier list, what they were actually claiming was they were using the word Sabra to mean a Jewish person born in Israel, which is obviously not true because Sabra there is used as a singular. They're obviously talking about the brand of Hummus or maybe the Sabra and massacre at a stretch. And Ethan claimed that they were being anti-Semitic because they were basically ranking people from Arab to Jew because apparently a thing that he just learned himself shows how little he knows about his own country, Israel. Yeah, it is his own country as a citizen, that he was just learning that now. This is crazy, really. But anyway, let's talk about being Israeli. Ethan Klein has no excuse. Ethan Klein chose to move to Israel. He chose to move there. He wasn't born there. He doesn't have that excuse. It's not even an excuse, by the way, because this idea that because you're born in a place, you can just be indifferent and do nothing about the fact that you live in a state that is made by and for people like you for your advantage at the expense of an entire other people. Israel is worse than an apartheid state. It is a state engaging in active frontier colonial genocide right now. For you to live in that state, to identify as Israeli, it's one thing to just live there. It's one thing to be born there. It's one thing to have nowhere else to go, which I'm sure there are some people in that situation. Some. It's another thing to identify as Israeli. The vast, vast majority of Palestinian citizens of Israel do not identify as Israeli, they identify as Palestinian citizens of Israel. If you are a Jew in Israel, there's nothing that's stopping you from caring about this label of Israeli so much, from identifying with it. You have the citizenship, sucks to be you, but it might be the only citizenship that you have. You might have no other option, but it's a whole nother thing to identify with some Israeli nationality, the Israeli national project, and to get offended when people call it out, as he does. Ethan Klein chose to move to Israel. This was an advantage afforded to him, a material advantage afforded to him. Instant citizenship in a first world developed country where he gets to live a privileged existence that can only exist due to the fact that millions and millions and millions of Palestinians are dispossessed, oppressed, tortured, imprisoned, massacred so that he can live that. He chose that. He didn't have to. He already lived in the US. He was already a rich YouTuber before that happened, but he chose to. For this guy to scream about anti-Semitism when he's rightfully being called out for his playing defense or tacit approval of an ongoing genocide, for him to be like this while he knows fully well that the exact same bullshit lies that he is spewing here about anti-Semitism are being used in this very moment to attack, to delegitimize people who are against an ongoing genocide and to legitimize the ongoing genocide. That is disgusting. He knows precisely what he's doing. He only cares about himself. This is a selfish man-child. It's someone who, as I said, has only ever experienced privilege as a result of being born Jewish, and now falling back on anti-Semitism when he's in over his head, in a situation that he's gotten himself into through his own abhorrent views and abhorrent defenses of Israel. He absolutely had his YouTube channel when he lived in Israel. He said live on his stream before that when he lived in Israel, he knew that Israel was hated around the world for its crimes against the Palestinians, so he would hide the fact that he lived in Israel in his videos. When he said that when there was Hebrew lettering in signs, for example, he would edit it out. So he was conscious of it too. He can't claim ignorance as if ignorance will be an excuse. That's another thing. People always claim ignorance as an excuse. How convenient it is to appeal to ignorance when you are benefiting from something. How convenient it is to claim ignorance, to claim that you did not know about anything. How is it even possible to live in Israel and not know? It is not possible. It is simply not possible that you have millions upon millions of people oppressed for your benefit and to know nothing about it, for one. For two, even if it was, is it not extremely convenient for these people that they can claim ignorance when they are benefiting handsomely from other people's suffering? Regardless, Ethan Klein can't claim that because he clearly knew. Obviously, he moved there. He wasn't even born there. He moved there by choice. As I said, it is one thing to be born in Israel as a Jew, to have no choice but to have one citizenship or to be stateless. Even still, most of those people end up being ravenous, genocidal maniacs. Very few of them do not. Israel is a state made for Israelis by Israelis. It is not some disembodied system that no one is responsible for. Israel is, well and truly, what it claims to be, a Jewish democracy, a democracy only for Jews. The actions of its government are a reflection of its society. Netanyahu is not the prime minister against the democratic will of the people. Netanyahu is the prime minister because the parties that he is a part of and that are a part of his coalition have been voted in repeatedly for 2 decades. And even those who disapprove of Netanyahu do not disapprove of the wider crimes of Israel that go far beyond Netanyahu. There is practically no internal resistance in Israel. There is less internal resistance in Israel than there was in Nazi Germany. The actual meaningful anti-Israel people who, as I said, do not identify as Israeli, who actually try to do things for Palestinians on the terms of Palestinians, number in the dozens. Literally. There is one single group of anarchists who goes to the West Bank and basically turns themselves into human shields. Those are the only people in all of Israel who offer meaningful resistance as Israeli Jews to the Israeli state. It is a sick society. Sick from the top down. It is not this isolated thing where people are just born there, they just live their lives unaware of what's going on. They know what's going on. They know what's being done for them, and they're largely okay with it. At the best, most of them outright approve of it. And the reason why they can be allowed to do it, why they can be allowed to maintain this state, if it was any other country in the world, aside from perhaps Saudi Arabia, would not be allowed to exist in this state. It would be boycotted, sanctioned, even militarily attacked into oblivion. Saudi Arabia is the only other country in this situation that I can think of. For Saudi Arabia, it's because of the oil. It's because Saudi Arabia has incredible leverage over the global economy that they aren't afraid to use, as they proved in the 70s. For Israel, it is this false narrative of perpetual Jewish victimhood. Jews have undoubtedly been oppressed in the not-too-distant past, in living memory for many people. But that does not legitimize or negate the facts of today, where Jewish people are not systematically oppressed anywhere in the world, aside from, maybe there's like one Jew left in Afghanistan or something, who you could say is oppressed. Aside from that, you have the visibly religious Jews in the US and elsewhere who might meaningfully experience discrimination. By the way, they are also discriminated against in Israel by other Jews. And then, every other Jew is only meaningfully discriminated against by other Jews, or not at all. If anything, they can use their Jewish identity and this notion that there is some perpetual and ongoing systemic oppression of Jewish people that is like on par or worse with, being like black in the USA, for example, they can fall back on that to get out of situations where they would otherwise be fucked, which is what Ethan Klein is doing here. The only meaningful oppression faced by Jews today, as I said, is visibly religious Jews, and I wouldn't even call that oppression, it's discrimination. Not so much systemic oppression. Most of them are very poor, but they're very poor because all they do is study the Torah and they don't work. And brown Jews in Israel, who are discriminated against by white Jews. That is the only Jews in the world today who experience any sort of real, meaningful discrimination and disadvantage in their day-to-day lives. Ethan Klein certainly has never meaningfully experienced any sort of material hurt to himself. He might have been insulted a couple of times for being Jewish, and that's really the worst of it. So for Ethan Klein, we have hurt feelings, nothing else. Occasional hurt feelings versus moved to Israel, moved into Palestinian house, got citizenship there, lived at large off the oppression of other people, and now falls back on his Jewish identity as a shield to justify him legitimizing genocide. So there is this Israeli artist who is incredibly popular in Israel. I've seen her described as the best artist in Israel, supposedly. And I have to say, if this is the best you've got, I am extremely fucking disturbed. Just to show you what the discrimination against brown Jews is like in Israel. Before I do this, I want to say that brown Jews, nonetheless, are still Jewish people in Israel, which is a Jewish supremacist state. The position that they have there is one of extreme privilege. They live at the expense of Palestinians. Still, they are equivalent to, it's like being Irish in the US 50 years ago. It's really not that bad. However, what I'm trying to get across here is that in terms of discrimination, the only meaningful discrimination they've ever faced in their lives, the only meaningful systemic disadvantage they've ever faced in their lives is at the hand of white Jews like Ethan Klein. Check this out. From Zoya Cherkasy, someone who voluntarily chose to move to Israel from Russia. This is how she thinks of non-white Jews. This is considered like incredible, profound art in Israel. It's literally like a 19th century fucking caricature of black people. This would be an exhibit of fucking racism. It is absolutely unbelievable. Unless you think this is the only piece of hers that there is that's like this. Basically all of them are. It's insane. Oh my God. Are you seeing this shit? This is what Ethan Klein thinks of these people as well. Now, this is anti-Semitism. This is real anti-Semitism. Honestly, no, I wouldn't even call it anti-Semitism. It's just racism. It's racism. They hate them because they look like Palestinians, basically, or at least their idea of what Palestinians should look like. They hate them because of their proximity to their colonial victims. It's like, when you were Irish in the USA 100 years ago, the worst insult that they could throw out against you was that you were like black people. It's the same sort of thing. They hate the brown Jews because they remind them of the Palestinians. Now, Ethan Klein, if you'd like to hop on and tell us in what way you have ever meaningfully experienced anti-Semitism, aside from perhaps some dumb fucks calling you mean names in the comments on YouTube, we'd love to hear about it. Or, just anything. Just anything you want to talk about, bud. Because you seem to be really eager to weaponize anti-Semitism at a moment when you know fully well that anti-Semitism is being weaponized to legitimize genocide. I'd like to hear your explanation for this, Ethan. This was 2014. Why were you doing blackface in 2014, Ethan Klein? You were 30 years old. How fucking dare you make these cynical bullshit accusations of anti-Semitism to try and get out of being called out for your support and legitimization of a genocide, for the colonialism that you personally carried out in Israel by choice. How dare that you now play the holier-than-thou card and claim that you yourself are some sort of victim at a time when you know full well that this exact narrative that you are peddling is being used to massacre Palestinian children in droves daily. And I know that this is going to fucking terrify you. If you ever see it, you'll just complain about it and screech about how it's anti-Semitic. You'll probably clip something out of context and say, this is the most anti-Semitic thing I've ever seen. Watch. If he does acknowledge this, which I doubt, that is what he will do. But if you can somehow get past your innate cowardice, the fact that the only thing that seems to matter for you in life is whether something makes you feel slightly anxious or not, if you can get past that, come on and talk. Dig up all the dirt that you want on me. Dig it up. Try to fall back on it. See how it goes for you. We know how you operate. We know what you are. We know who you are. A piece of shit who supports genocide. Someone who, when it comes time to denounce your past, to denounce the horrible things that you have done, make no mistake, moving to Israel by choice is a very horrible thing to do. When it comes time to be like, oh man, I shouldn't have done that. Oh man, I shouldn't have worn blackface. Oh man, I shouldn't have said the N-word. Oh man, I shouldn't have been anti-Semitic to those random Hasidic guys in the street. I dare you to fess up to that, to talk to me about it, and not just screech anti-Semitism about it as if you are not horribly anti-Semitic yourself. As if you have not caused more anti-Semitic hatred by screaming at actual visibly Jewish people about how much you dislike their Jewish traits than you have ever even remotely meaningfully experienced it in any way that actually affects you. Come on, you cowardly piece of shit. I dare you. And just one last comment. It's gross the way that people try to absolve people like Klein or Ethan Klein or other people from Israel. Well, Ethan's not from Israel, but you know what I mean. He chose to move there. They try to absolve them by being like, well, they were born there. What do you expect? I expect Klein to not interject when her husband is making a very slight announcement of Israeli war crimes. Ethan Klein said, no one's denying that Israel is committing war crimes. Like the most obvious thing in the world. And Hila said, straight up, I deny that. I contest that. Screaming in the background. And you're telling me that people like that don't deserve responsibility. They don't deserve to be blamed for what their state does. Not even doing the most basic thing, acknowledging the war crimes, which wouldn't absolve you by itself, not at all. Because you have to go further than that. When these crimes are being carried out for you, for your benefit, what value is there in you even identifying with this state anymore? So spare me the bullshit. If you're from Israel and you identify as Israeli, you are committed to maintaining this state, you attack people who are against it, who are against the genocide being carried out there for your benefit, then you quite clearly have some problems with actually being against Israel and what Israel does. Because it doesn't really seem like you're against it at all. It seems like you're just kind of slightly uncomfortable with what it's doing. You might think it's going a bit too far, but the fact of the matter is, it's been too far since its creation. The very notion of its creation was going too far. The very notion of its creation was the unilateral declaration of exclusive Jewish dominance over the majority of a country, which Jews, the vast majority of them, were only recent migrants to, against the will of the people who already lived there. If you see no issue with that, with that very foundation, you see no issue with the very project of Zionism, then you are deep down a supporter of genocide, regardless of how much you pretend not to be. Because to be against the root of the problem is the only way to be against the problem. Ethan Klein, today babies were blown up. Hundreds of them were blown up for you, an Israeli citizen. They were blown up for your benefit by a government chosen by the citizens of Israel, people just like you, so they could, at least in their own fucked up perception, live more comfortably, live more securely. Perhaps in the long term, whatever vision it is they have for this, the same sort of atrocities that have been carried out for you by people like you since Israel's inception, and since beforehand. That is the real situation here. It's time for you to stop pretending otherwise, to stop playing the victim. It's time for you and everyone else like you who weaponizes anti-Semitism like this to shut the fuck up, stop pretending. You are not a victim, you are a victimizer. You are not the oppressed, you are the oppressor. You are a perpetrator. In your own little way, sure, but it's still a way. As I said, Ethan will ignore this entirely because he knows that he's fucking terrified. His whole problem is feeling anxiety. Well, you feel anxiety, Ethan? You feel anxiety due to being Jewish? While Israel is genociding people for the benefit of Israeli Jews? While justifying that with the exact same narrative that you yourself are using to feign victimhood? You feel anxious, Ethan? Children are being blown up for you, Ethan. They're being blown to smithereens. They're being blown up to such an extent that there's nothing left of them once the fucking dust clears of the bomb. Shut the fuck up. You're a white American millionaire. Shut the fuck up. How dare you make this about you, you goddamn callous fuck. And again, I'm just going to reiterate this just so that you can clip this part and respond to Ethan with it if he does it. If he responds to this, which I doubt he will, it will be an Instagram story where he clips one part of it to say, this guy denies the Holocaust or denies that anti-Semitism exists at all or something. How anti-Semitic? That's what he's going to do. Watch out for it.